ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to welcome you for the conclave Logistic 2017. I thank all of you for attending this event today. Before we begin this event, shall we ensure that our phones are in silent mode? Yep. Thank you, that's cool. Yep. I'd like to introduce where is the restroom and the emergency exit and all these things. This is the emergency exit. In case of any emergency, you can use this exit. And the restrooms are in the corridor or the right-hand side of the corridor for the gentlemen as well as the ladies. The consumer expects the products and services to reach them always on time. In order to meet and match their expectation, we must have a seamless connection and flow between all points of supply chain. Also, with this rapid growth in the need of supply chain industry, we need to stay connected, motivated, and updated. Today, we are having this event to establish a connection, good motivation, and get experts' opinion. To begin with, I would like to invite the guests today. Mr. Osama Ahmed Al-Kuhaji to come to the dais. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Osama Al-Kuhaji. Thank you. All right. Mr. Khalid Ahmed Al-Nema from Bahrain Airport Company. Mr. Khalid Al-Bakri. Mr. Yusuf Isa Bubshaid, Assistant Undersecretary, Ministry of Transportation and Telecommunication. Please give a round of applause for all the guests. Our event chairman, Mr. V. Ravi, to come to the dais, please. I request Mrs. Anita to honor them with a flower bouquet. Ms. Anita will honor Mr. Osama Al-Kuhaji from right. Yep. Mr. Khalid Ahmed Al-Nema. Khalid Al-Bakri. And our chief guest, Mr. Yusuf Isa Bubshaid. Thank you, Mrs. Anita. To say more about this event, we have Mr. Ravi Venkateshwaran, the event chairman. He is a publisher and MD of Ecargolog, which is the Asia's cargoes and logistic online website. And he conducted many events in India and other places. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Ravi Venkateshwaran to give a welcome address.
Wonderful morning. Good morning, everybody. World Economic Forum raised Bahrain as 33rd rank globally after analyzing 138 economics in terms of institutions, policies, and services, facilitating the free flow of goods. Bahrain performed particularly strong in the availability and quality of transport infrastructure, ranking 17th for availability and use of ICT, and 28th for operating environment. What is more, Bahrain ranks 34th out of 144 economies in the 2014-15 Global Competitiveness report for overall transport infrastructure and 15th for port infrastructure. Logistics and warehousing sector are set to witness a real boom, driven by the government's push to expand the industrial sector contribution to the economy to 20% by 2020, up from the current 10% level. Massive infrastructure projects like high-speed rail network and new airports under construction, coupled with projected population growth to the tune of 31 million by 2020, present plenty of new opportunities for the logistics sector in the coming years in the Middle East countries. Keeping in view of the rapid changes happening now, we thought of bringing the people together with this conclave, identifying the avenues on the infrastructure coupled with investment possibilities, with competition for finance putting budgets under pressure. How can we afford to upkeep our roads, sanitation, energy, ports, and other communications systems, let alone invest in new ones? Infrastructures have always been part of the livelihood of strong economies and societies. Well, we have with us stalwarts from the industry, statisticians, professionals who can analyze the topic just like that and give more solution for this. May I now have the pleasure of welcoming our chief guest of the day, Mr. Yusuf Isa Bubsheit, Assistant Under Secretary, Ministry of Transportation and Telecommunication. Welcome you, sir. We were expecting Mr. Khalid Al-Zayani, first Vice Chairman of BCCI. I think due to his pre-occupants, he was not able to make it, and he is represented by a friend. And we expected Mr. Ayman Zainal also, CCO of Bahrain Airport Authority. I think last minute there have been some changes. And Mr. Khalid Al-Bakri, I've been following with him for the past 1 week. He's from Saudi Arabia. He's got a wonderful logistics company. I welcome you, sir. Well, we have with us for the first session Mr. Arno Storm from APM Terminals, CEO of APM Terminals, and Mr. Yahya Ali Buali, Director Sales Marketing for Gulf Air. Two chairmen, one from shipping, Mr. Mike Kamara is represented by Mr. Ravindu, and ACWG chairman, Mr. Izam Huzan Sultan. I welcome you all and sure that this session is going to be a fantastic one. And the other session is Philip Noure, KPMG, what part is expected. And I'm sure he'll go with his presentation on the topic of the day, what I'm sure the entire logistics fraternity will carefully listen to him and get the benefit and wait for what would happen in the next few months. Welcome you, sir. Our last session is taken care of by two stalwarts from the, rather than learned professional from industry. First one, Mr. Hamad Fakru. Welcome you, sir. Director, Bahrain Logistics Zone. And the second half by our Mr. Khalid Al-Bakri. Welcome you again. Thank you very much. I welcome you all.
Thank you, even Chairman Mr. Ravi, for the address. To give us the special address of this event, let me invite Mr. Osama Ahmed Al-Kuhaji. Please join me in welcoming Osama Ahmed Al-Kuhaji.
Good morning, all. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Allow me at the outset to convey the apologies of BCCI's first Vice Chairman, Mr. Khalid Al-Zayani, as he wished to attend this event but could not due to some urgent commitment. Allow me also to convey his warmest greetings and address this event on his behalf. It gives me great honor to welcome you all to this prominent conclave, which centers the economic outlook of Bahrain and sheds scope light on investment opportunities in this logistics sector. I am afraid sentiment will overwhelm reason if I speak as a citizen and admirer of this beautiful country. Thus, I'll speak in a language of facts. Since I am time-bound, allow me to briefly underline key elements making Bahrain a distinctive business and investment destination. First of all, Bahrain enjoys global market access with its own free trade agreement, the FTA, with the United States, and membership in the Great Arab Free Trade Area, the GAFTA, alongside Egypt, Kuwait, Jordan, Libya, Morocco, Oman, Palestine, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Tunisia, United Arab Emirates, and Yemen. In addition to other FTAs signed with the friendly countries as part of the Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC, hence reinforcing marketing integration and allowing businesses a multifaceted competitive advantage in the trading of goods. Secondly, and in the complement to the first factor, the country world-class logistic and infrastructure with its advanced seaport, international airport, and sophisticated road system, all of which established and operated according to international standards and are subject to timely renovation and revamping schemes. Not forgetting to mention the country's investor-friendly laws and regulations, making it one of the most liberal business environments with zero taxation for private companies, few indirect taxes for private enterprises and individuals, and a free repatriation of capital. And unlike many countries in the region, Bahrain allows 100% foreign ownership of business assets and real estate in most sectors. No wonder Bahrain is the preferred location for many international companies, including prominent logistics companies such as DHL, Agility, and Schmidt Middle East, and to name a few. Ladies and gentlemen, the remarkable and fast-paced development of Bahrain has by no means been accidental. It came as a definite outcome of the far-sighted economic vision initiated by the wise leadership headed by His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, His Royal Highness the Prime Minister Prince Khalifa bin Salman Al Khalifa, and His Royal Highness Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, the Crown Prince, Deputy Supreme Commander and First Deputy Prime Minister, stressing on empowering the private sector and cementing public-private sector partnership, thus building a strong-based economy on three pillars, namely sustainability, competitiveness, and fairness, and ensuring Bahrain's rank at the forefront of countries. Ladies and gentlemen, from this platform, allow me to welcome you all once again to this renowned event and wish you all a very success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osama Ahmed Al-Kuhaji, for that brief introduction about the vision and mission of Bahrain to support in logistic and supply chain management and to the economic contribution towards the economy. To move on to the next speaker, let me welcome Mr. Khalid Al-Bakri to address the delegates.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum jami'an. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored really to be with you here today in this important event discussing the logistics 2017 in Middle East. I will have in the last session long presentation talking about the logistics, what the challenge, what the impact on the economy, and how can we improve the inefficiency which we have in some of our countries. I came from Saudi Arabia, but actually I lived in Bahrain for the last 7 years, and I work in between. In Saudi Arabia, there is no doubt we are behind in the efficiency in logistics, and most of the GCC company, I might take in as exception Emirates, where they were ahead of the game. They improved. They started with Jebel Ali, where very soon they will have, I think, the first integrated multi-model logistics hub. So I will elaborate in all these details about the supply chain and how we start from the source till the consumers, and again, the challenges and the improvements. So I would like to thank my colleagues who are attending today and adding value and sharing information and knowledge with us. I would like to thank the organizer and you as well that given us the opportunity to share with you our thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Khalid Al-Bakri. Now, I'd like to invite Mr. Yusuf Isa Bubshaid, the Assistant Undersecretary, Ministry of Transportation and Telecommunication, to inaugurate this event.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First of all, I would like to convey His Excellency, Mr. Kamal bin Ahmed, Minister of Transportation and Telecommunication, warm regards and apologize for not being able to join us today. He mentioned that this is an important event, but unfortunately he could not do it. Also, Mr. Hassan Al-Majid, he was keen to be amongst you, but unfortunately he couldn't do it as well. I'm glad to be here. This is an important event, as I said. If you just have a focus on the head area, you will witness two things. First of all, opportunities, and second thing, how the government is dedicated for the logistics. We have state-of-the-art port, we have Bahrain logistic zone, and we have the industrial area. So this sector is important. The conference comes at the right time. I believe that you will have a fruitful ideas and discussions, and I hope all the best for this conference. And Ports and Maritime Affairs in the Ministry of Transportation and Telecommunication always will support this part of the logistics, and hope to have you, as I said, for fruitful discussions. And those who are coming to Bahrain, this is your country, and welcome to Bahrain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yusuf Isa, for this welcoming address on the. Now we have to award or just give away the momentum, means honor those guests and chief guests. To start with, let me call our event organizer, Mr. Ravi, to come forward and give the honor those guests by giving away the momentum. Mr. Yusuf Isa Bushaid, the Assistant Secretary of Undersecretary of Ministry of Transportation and Telecommunication. Thank you, Mr. Ravi. Mr. Khalid Al-Bakri will receive the memento from our event chair, Mr. Ravi. Mr. Mr. Osama Ahmed Al-Koheji. Mr. Khalid Ahmed Al-Naima will receive the memento. Thank you very much for your presence. We are very honored and we enjoyed your speech. And it's a great pleasure for us for being with us. Thank you very much. We are here to know more or learn from the experts. So we are moving to that session to know more about improvement on infrastructure, capability, and investment. Our first presenter is Arno Strom. He came to Bahrain on November 2015, and he's a Chief Operation Officer for APM Terminals. And he's an expert in operations and supply chain logistics. He has over 2 decades of experience in leadership and management. He has delivered lasting results in organization and process. He's responsible for all operational marine continuous development, IT, and technical asset management of the company. His key to his success is in order to build a successful team. He is a native of Netherlands. He completed Master of Management and Organization from TAS School of Business. He served in Royal Netherlands Army for 17 years as an infantry officer. Please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Arnos Tom.
For some technical issues. Thank you all for having me today. I would like to speak with you for a few minutes on some latest development in the port and maritime industry. I'm having some issues with the presentation screen itself, so my apologies for that up front. As I said, I would like to take you through some developments in the industry. First of all, I would like to introduce APM Terminals and the Maersk Group very shortly to you, and then I would go into what I called a summary of the global maritime trade as we see it today in port and maritime. And of course, that also has an impact on the infrastructure in this whole changing landscape, which I will address during my presentation itself. Shortly, as I said, I would like to introduce the Maersk Group. Most of you most likely will know that company. It's a big company. Recently went through a huge restructuring. We have organized the company itself in two divisions nowadays. One of the divisions is the Transport and Logistics division, and the other division is the Energy division. By that, we are trying to address today's challenges and try to also upgrade our services and provide the best of services to our customers. As you can see, APM Terminals is part of the Transport and Logistics division and is working closely together with Svitzer, Maersk Line, and of course Maersk Container Industries and Damco. As you can see, the APMT group is spread out all over the world and has the largest footprint of ports compared to our competitors. If we're looking at our competitors, we are second in row. Depends a little bit on how you look at the developments. Our headquarters is being based in the Netherlands, and we have currently almost 22,000 employees all over the world. Furthermore, it's also good to know that we have a footprint in 69 countries, and we operate 73 ports all over the world, so you can say we are one of the big players in our industry. So I would quickly like to go to Bahrain, of course. We are operator of Khalifa bin Salman Port, a local terminal with, of course, a global network. The services that we provide at KBSP are broad, very broad. As you can see on the slide, we are giving services to our customers such as FCL, LCL, break bulk and project cargo, Ro-Ro vessels are coming in, and even livestock. Besides that, and that's quite unique for a port which we normally operate, we also have a cruise terminal serving the tourism in Bahrain. Furthermore, of course, we have got a container terminal where we have got a large proportion of domestic export and import, and we also have some transshipment as well. Besides that, we are also responsible for pilotage, towage, and mooring services to the trade of Bahrain. If you look at our competitive position in the Gulf region, you can actually see at the stats that we are doing pretty good. To be honest, we're doing very good. And we're proud of that. And we're trying to maintain that good name that we have built upon the last few years. And I must say, we always have received a tremendous support from the government, the port and maritime authorities here in Bahrain, and we are very thankful for that. Let's have a look at some drivers of the global trade and the economical development and population growth. Of course, we can see that the emerging areas of the world, particularly Africa, will lead to a growth of population in the next decades, and that will have an effect on the trade itself. We can see throughout the years that global container throughput has been growing year over year. And of course, we all have seen quite a dip because of the economical crisis in the years 2008 and a few years above that. But we can also see that still there is a respectable growth year over year. Of course, that has also an effect, and I've tried to highlight the main concerns for the shipping industry that we face today. So if you're looking at this moment, there is quite a container fleet overcapacity. And I will go into that a little bit more into detail in a few moments. Besides that, we also see that there is a huge consolidation in shipping lines. And I will also address that a little bit more into detail. We also see that because of those developments and because of the increase of the fleet itself, we face port congestion in several ports all over the world. Here in Bahrain, we don't have that, and that's a good thing. Of course, we also see in the industry that there's quite an instability when we're looking at the freight rates, which has a huge effect on the industry itself. That downward rate pressure has an effect on the need to fill the larger vessels. I will come back to the larger vessels as well. And congestion and other surcharges are rapidly increasing the cost for the industry. We are seeing as well that the vessels nowadays are becoming bigger and bigger, and that has an effect as well on the trade. And besides that, the liner service ship speed are increasing as well. We have seen in the past that due to the high oil cost, the liners were actually slow steaming to save money. Nowadays, of course, we see that the oil prices have come down and the pressure on the industry to perform has gone up, which most likely will have an impact on the speed of services and the turnaround of vessels as well. We have also seen in the last years that the seaborne trade is growing faster than the global GDP. And that has an effect as well on the whole industry and the facilities that we need to have to serve the global trade. So let's have a look at the shipping alliances, which I was talking about just now. Because of all the challenges within the industry, we have seen a huge consolidation of the lines the last few years, which was unthinkable the last, let's say, 5 years ago. So, of course, there's the big player, which is 2M. Maersk is in there together with MSC. The other big player is the Ocean Alliance, which has CMA CGM, COSCO Shipping, OOCL, and Evergreen. Then the third big alliance is Hapag-Lloyd, NYK, Mitsui, K-Line, and Yangmin. So basically, throughout this consolidation, we see that we are getting a whole other landscape in the global trade, which also has local effects as well. And of course, there is also a vessel sharing agreement between Maersk Line, MSC, and Hyundai Merchant Marine, which was recently announced. If we're looking at the global container fleets, as I mentioned, the size of the fleet and the vessels itself are continuing to grow. If you're looking at the shipping companies and the capacity that they have today, you can see that there is a lot of capacity in the market. And as I mentioned before, currently there is overcapacity in the market, of course, which has an effect on the freight rates. As I mentioned, all of the lines have been ordering new vessels the last few years, and there are still quite a lot of vessels to come in the next few years. And as you can see, that will add also a huge capacity into the industry as well. I've just wanted to mention the latest vessel that have been brought into the fleet. It's a vessel from OOCL, the Hong Kong, and it has a total capacity of more than 20,000 TEU. Currently today, the experts are thinking that the limits of the vessels will be around the 24,000. However, we've also seen in the past that has been said already many times. So let's see what the future will bring. Because of that changing landscape, of course, the infrastructure needs to change with it as well. And it has a huge effect on vessels and ports. As I've been saying, the last few years, we have seen a growth in trade. And we also think, and that's of course being backed up by Drewry Shipping, that the growth will continue as well. We've also seen that there have been some huge changes which has an effect. For instance, the locks at the Panama Canal have been enlarged, and the Suez Canal has been expanded as well. So these developments have an effect. Besides that, as I mentioned, the vessels are becoming bigger and bigger, also because of the infrastructural changes and the nowadays demand. Of course, the port industry needs to react on all those changes. So as you can see on the slides, there is demand on land space. We have to take care of the sustainability of how we're doing business. We have to take care of our safety, and we have to take care of the environment as well. Besides that, there is also a huge effect on the inland infrastructure and connectivity, which is becoming more and more important. Besides that, we've seen, of course, because of all the enlargement of the vessels, there has been an evolution in crane sizes. But it's not only the crane size itself that has been developing. It also, the port and the terminal industry has been introducing smarter ways to do business. We've seen already a few examples that, for instance, crane operators in STS cranes are not longer needed, but the cranes are being operated from a distance, and that has an effect. Besides that, innovation has been fundamentally in the last few years. For instance, at our new facility, Maasvlakte 2 terminal in Rotterdam, we have introduced quite a few innovations as well, as you can see on the slides. It is an innovation in the industry to have automated lift-guided vehicles which are driving by themselves, and if they need to charge up batteries, they will go to a docking station themselves and charge up their batteries. APM Terminals is dedicated to provide more opportunities in countries where there is no infrastructure. We have got a huge portfolio. We have got 8 new projects coming up, and we are looking at several new projects as well. For the existing infrastructure, for instance, here in Bahrain, we are looking at retrofitting our facilities. We have been in Bahrain investing immensely in our terminal operating systems and the way how we operate. All, of course, because we want to serve the trade as good as possible to get a competitive advantage not only here in Bahrain, but also in the Gulf region. With that, I would like to conclude, and I would like to thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anas Tom, for that detailed overview of the presentation about the APM logistics, APM terminals. We came to know about the strategy, the concerns, and so many things. Thank you once again. Our next presenter is Mr. Yahya Bouali, Sir Ali Bouali, the Director, Sales and Marketing of Gulf Air. Please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Yahya Ali Bouali.
Well, okay, to start, thank you for inviting us, as I said, to this forum. It gives us the opportunity to speak to such a wonderful audience. My first impression is that this place looks like a garden with only a few flowers. So it's not very usual to have women in a logistic forum, but it's good to have them with us. Anyway, until it gets fixed, until it gets fixed, let me ask you this question. Does anyone know when Gulf Air was actually formed? Not 1950. And don't Google it, because we won't give any prizes. Anyway, 1949, when Gulf Air was actually formed. It was by a captain, a British captain, who came and flew an air taxi between Tehran and Doha. And then a year after that, BOEC has actually taken 22% share of the company. And in 1973, the governments of the 4 states, just to give you a little bit of history, have actually bought equal share in the company. Does anyone know how much the company actually contributes in GDP to the economy of Bahrain? Again, don't Google it because it's not there. Gulf Air is the first commercial airline established in the Middle East. As I said, in 1949, this is when it became an official airline flying between Bahrain and Doha. And to also manage expectation, we are predominantly passenger airline. We are not a cargo airline. But you will see at the end of the presentation how much the airline actually contribute, not just to the economy, but to the cargo and logistic for the kingdom. As you can see, we have, trying to pitch a little bit on passenger part of the business, we have a traditional Arabian hospitality, business-friendly and family airline. We have been ranked one of the best airlines in the Middle East with an 82.7% on-time performance. As I said in the beginning, Gulf Air is a very important a key infrastructure asset for Bahrain. Its base is actually in Bahrain. We fly to 42 destinations, but this is not all, as you will probably see in a minute. We fly to 25 countries from Bahrain. We have 28 aircrafts on our fleet right now. We fly to 140, or we make 140 departures from Bahrain. We have a current capacity, and this is very interesting for a belly airline, cargo airline, is to have that capacity. We have about 167,000 tons of capacity to work with from Bahrain. As I said, this actually says 1950, but the reality is it started back in 1949. We have lots of information on our website, so we invite you to visit our website to get more information. We actually employ 3,000 people right now, about 3,000 people. But this is not all, because the airline actually contributes to the economy, and it has an indirect contribution of about 27,000 jobs for the kingdom. We thought we mentioned that too. Strategic hub in the heart of the Middle East. We have seamless onward connectivity and contribution. We actually do multiple departures to 10 regional destinations, and that basically means that we are doing more than 2 flights a day to 10 regional destinations. We have recently added 5 flights to Colombo on our fleet. We have added 6 weekly flights from April to Turkey, and we're flying to Tbilisi, Georgia on the 22nd of June. And this is just part of the expansion of the future of Gulf Air. This is the current network of the company. We are predominantly, again, a strong Middle Eastern carrier with a similar route expansion into lucrative markets like India and Pakistan. But we also add relevant routes to feed into our network from both passenger and cargo perspective. We fly, as I said, in 42 cities in 25 countries, and we fly from three different continents. But as I said, we are not just flying to 42 destinations. We're flying to many more of those with our partners in the US. We have a seamless arrangement with American Airlines. We fly to all these destinations within the US. So that's an added capacity, an advantage, market advantage for us. We actually fly to all these places with our partners to Europe. So it's not just the 42 destinations, we fly to these places as well. And in Asia, where we are, I must say, very uniquely active in China and Japan, where our uplift bringing cargo from these places is quite significant, actually to the surprise of some people, including myself. These are the partners that we work with, just a sample of the partners that we work with in the Gulf and Middle East. This is our partners in other places as well. So we've got a significant network contribution through these partners as well, feeding into our network. Now, this is the interesting part. I think a lot of people have waited to want to know. We are, as I said, currently flying 28 aircrafts, 6 of them A330, Airbus A330, and the rest of them are all 320, 321 aircraft. These have got limitations in capacity, and we will not be competing with the like of APM. We will be complementing APM in bringing stuff and cargo into the kingdom. But the good part of it is that by 2020, we will end up having 39 aircraft, and are all eager to actually see our 787 coming in next April, 2018, in April. And that will give us a much bigger capacity to deal with than the current fleet. By that time, we will have a completely new fleet, by the way. Today, the average age of the aircraft is 8 years. By then, we will have them, all of them changed to new A320 and 321, in addition to the 787, of course. We are actually active, very active here in the kingdom and elsewhere as well, in these 4 market segments. We are very active in courier, mail, of course, air freight, and Falcon Express. This is not new. This is nothing new. I mean, if you are in the cargo business, you need to be there to be successful. More details, you can, I mean, again, I invite you to our website. You will have lots of information there. Now, what is it for the future? Going forward, of course, Gulf Air, 2 important aviation infrastructure assets are growing in support of the kingdom future development and long-term needs, not just in logistics and cargo, but also in travel, in tourism, in investment, trade, export, and import as well. As I said, we've seen Gulf Air is actually investing, focusing on the development of itself going forward. The new incoming fleet will give us a little bit more edge into expanding our operation into different places, and that's something that we're in the company also looking forward to see, starting next year. But by 2020, we will eventually have about 60 destinations, more destinations. So we are growing. We had to scale down, unfortunately, because of many reasons, but we are now going back to where we're supposed to be. We've grown from 39 to 42 to eventually 220 would probably be there, a much bigger airline in the area. This is what we envisage or see or expect to become by 2020. As you can see, in 2016, we had a capacity of 167,000 tons of capacity. This doesn't mean that we will use it all because we are a passenger airline. We are not a cargo airline. We use our belly to carry cargo, or aircraft belly to carry cargo. But we are happy, very happy to have used the capacity that we are having or have now we're doing something like 65 to 70% of the capacity. So we are there. But you can see from 167 tons of cargo by 2020, we will probably do 200,000 tons of cargo capacity in our hand. I hope this was informative and useful. Thank you for listening, and thank you again for giving us the chance to come and talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yahya Alibu Ali, for those very informative speech about the strategy and views and vision about the Gulf Fair. To move on to the next speaker, he is from BSAA. I'd like to invite Mr. Ravindu to give the presentation. Ravindu.
Good morning, all. On behalf of Bahrain Shipping Agents Association, I would like to welcome everyone and warm greetings from the board members. On behalf of the chairman who couldn't be here, please accept our apologies, but we would like to give you a brief overview what the Bahrain Shipping Agents Association is all about and what is his role playing in the Kingdom of Bahrain. As you all have seen from the previous two speakers, that the Kingdom, the expansion plans on the air freight and the terminal side, what we have also noticed that the role of the agent, what is being played as the Kingdom of Bahrain moving towards from strength to strength, the agent's role has become enormously so important, and there was so many discussions made among authorities that how we could have a common platform to address all common challenges. So that was the reason the Bahrain Shipping Agents Association was formally launched last year, which is approved by the Ministry of Labor and Social Development to be the national voice for the Kingdom of Bahrain. As you all probably know, who has been in the shipping industry, informally the Bahrain Shipping Agents Association have existed for more than 30 years. However, as the industry moved from strength to strength, the challenges are also enormous. So that was the main reason why we wanted to have a common platform for foreign principals, for the local authorities, customs, immigration, PMA, everyone to have a common platform where you could talk to agents in order to make sure the common challenges are tackled together. We have seen some great support coming in from Ports and Maritime Affairs, APMT, and there is a great momentum and shifting towards the positive side, how we can promote the Kingdom of Bahrain together. During the last 5 to 6 years, as RNO explained, you have seen so much of change in industry, where the alliances, the mergers are coming together, and that has an impact on the local agents as well. So as an association, we also are having certain discussions with international bodies such as FONASPA and Baltic Exchange and so on, how Kingdom of Bahrain can align the position to make sure all the investors and the various principals overseas coming into Bahrain and having a common platform to discuss to agents and to address common challenges. Having said that, Bahrain Shipping Agents Association remained as a common body to address common challenges, and I thank you very much on behalf of the board members and all the agents for giving us this opportunity to talk a few words. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ravindu, for your presentation. Now I would like to recognize the presenters. To honor them, let me call Mr. Satyan from ASRI. He was the man behind the idea of arranging this event. Please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Satyan to recognize. Let me call upon Mr. Arno Strom, the presenter and COO of APM Terminals. Mr. Yahya Bouali, the Director of Sales and Marketing, Gulfair, or any representative from Gulfair. Mr. Ravindu from BSAA. And Mr. Essam Hassan Sultan from ACWG Chairman. Yep, any representative can. Let us thank you very much for the presenters and the delegates. We'll have a break for half an hour, and then we'll join again. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat. We'll start our session within 2 minutes. The most awaiting session to know about the VAT. VAT is a new concept in Bahrain and the region. Companies must start investing to understand the impact of VAT on their operations and the system, enabling compliance with the local and international VAT legislation by introduction date in 2018. With the introduction of VAT, a variety of rules will be introduced that have an immediate impact on a cost and cash flow on the industry. To explain more about it, we have Philip Noure, a VAT partner from KPMG. He has more than 20 years of experience in taxation and has worked in various locations. He has been advising the SGT in Oman and the Ministry of Finance in Bahrain on the country's best VAT system and legislation. Please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Philip Noure, the VAT partner, to give his presentation.
Thank you very much indeed. As you heard, it's not the first time that I'm in Bahrain. I did work with the Ministry of Finance already quite some years ago, and that is indeed quite some years. So VAT has now been talked about for 12 years here in the country and actually across all the GCC. I had a pleasure also in working with the Secretariat General of Taxation in Oman, with the Emirates of Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And the last 4 years, I must say that it says now KPMG on my business card, but I was not with KPMG the last 4 years. I was working with another firm, but that also gave me the pleasure and the honor of working and contributing extensively to the GCC Framework Agreement, so the current basis that we have for VAT. I'm doing now, in September, it's going to be 25 years that I'm doing indirect tax. It's been a lifetime. I'm still planning to do 15 more years. And I'm definitely planning to do them here in the region, located in Bahrain, but I'm covering also other countries and quite some countries. And the fact that I'm here, well, I'm back here since 4 weeks, does show that VAT is really coming. So take it from me personally. I want to take it a bit personal. If some of you in the next months or the next couple of years have the pleasure of meeting my wife, then you're going to realize that she's a person who likes to be in one place only. She doesn't like to move. So if I could convince her to move to Bahrain and take basically out everything from our place in London where we were the last 4 years, trust me, it means VAT is coming, and I got a very good, compelling business case for her to come here. When is it coming? A couple of insights. So I did indeed work. I cannot claim, because that would be not accurate, that I'm working now with the Ministry of Finance, but I hope indeed that I can continue the work I did in the past over the next couple of weeks. But I'm definitely in a position to share a few insights about what's happening behind the scenes. So how ready or how not ready the whole system will be going forward. We'll take it definitely from a GCC perspective as well, because typically in your business sector, you are not just confined to one country. You are working across different countries, or you have indeed contracts and engagements and agreements, customers and suppliers across different countries. So we'll take it definitely wider than just Bahrain. Bringing you a couple of principles of VAT, because knowledge transfer is equally important. I won't go into much detail, just what you need to know indeed for your sector. I guess the impact of the VAT on the business, and that's the $1 million question. How will it impact me? Will I have to charge VAT? Will it be a cost? I'm very happy to take throughout the presentation questions, and I would even say any questions, because what I learned in meeting with clients across all sectors is there's a lot of personal questions as well. Will I basically on the 1st of January see a lot of people coming across the causeway to buy goods here in Bahrain and then take them back? We can come to that one as well. Some timelines and potentially next steps. I think I'm 25 years in the consultancy. I had the pleasure of working on some secondments with business as well, but eventually I need to give you some insights from a consulting perspective. But overall, and I will go seamlessly, hopefully, through this presentation, but this is your session. I'm not here to tell you what I think. I'm not here to tell you what I want, what I believe. I think I'm here basically to give clarifications. I'm here basically to answer your questions. So I want you to go out of this session with at least some more knowledge than you have for the moment. Hopefully some comfort and less concerns. Because inevitably, I don't know if there is any representatives of the press in the room, but inevitably we see quite some articles coming out in the press, I think even more the last 2 weeks. Not necessarily accurate, that is not necessarily either the mistake or the fault of the journalist, but there is a lot of sensation going around. 2 weeks ago, let's pick that one up, there was in the Gulf Daily News suddenly a big headline that Bahrain will not be ready, and then secondly that within the next 24 months, the VAT rate, which is currently set at 5%, will be going up to 10% and then to 15%. Of course, that catches attention. Let's look at the readiness of Bahrain immediately and the readiness of the GCC overall. Now, about this 5 to 10 to 15%, the 5% VAT rate is in the GCC framework agreement. It is basically being agreed by 6 member states to have it at 5%. The GCC framework agreement does not give any option to any member state of the GCC to increase that rate or to decrease that rate. And it doesn't say that it is a suggestion, the 5%. It is fixed, it is cemented in the framework agreement. So for anything to go up in the future, it will require the approval of 6 GCC member states. So in other words, if Oman keeps putting its foot down that it doesn't want an increase, nothing can happen going forward, so it needs basically consensus. There is knowledge that Saudi would like to increase it. They already wanted 10% before. But of course, there is, across the 6 countries, very different demographic environment. So UAE wants to tax everything, for example, on VAT, because they have got a very big expat community and they need the money. That's why they also announced last week that they would be taxing basic food, which will be 94 items will be exempt or zero rated here in Bahrain. So the rate definitely is here to stay for quite some time, and unless, of course, oil prices are going off the cliff and everybody needs some more revenue, then it might be quickly that a consensus is reached. On the readiness of the different countries, first, the timeline. 1st of January, we do expect, and that's been firmly reiterated, we do expect United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia to go for VAT. It's actually in the state budget of the UAE that VAT would be part of the revenues for 2018. And they're very clearly doing it. Saudi Arabia will go as well. I do expect, but that's going to be confirmed probably just after Eid, that Oman will also follow on the 1st of January 2018. That has immediately a knock-on effect in the sense that the other countries, if 2 of the countries go on the 1st of January, the others have to follow within 12 months. Bahrain, again on Saturday, the Minister of Finance has reconfirmed that 1st of June 2018 is the go-live date for VAT in Bahrain. Is that feasible? It's going to be a close call, but it is still feasible. It is not impossible. Why? First of all, because there is a draft legislation, so Bahrain doesn't start from scratch. The UAE have their draft legislation. Sorry, there is some local fauna flying around. So the UAE has a draft legislation, Saudi has it as well, and we expect actually that it's going to be published in the next few weeks. Saudi Arabia was expected to have it this week in the public, and sorry, I'm just going behind me. The framework agreement has been made public by Saudi Arabia, which was as well a communication as a kind of political move to make sure there was some pressure on the other countries. I don't expect anymore, to be honest, that the Saudi legislation will come this week, given the start of Ramadan on Saturday, but it is there definitely. Qatar also has approved in cabinet the draft legislation. Bit of a question mark around Kuwait. Kuwait, there is a debate in Parliament, but again, if 2 countries are going 1st of January, Kuwait will also have to follow, probably then late 2018. Qatar, late 2018. Bahrain, 1st of June 2018, with a 30-40% chance that they would postpone it to August or September, but definitely not to the end of the year. So Oman, Saudi, and UAE will be first going forward. There is some activity, taking it back to a Bahraini perspective. There is a few elements going forward that show clearly activity. One, I think the legislation is there, and I will give you some insights on that legislation because I've written it. And it needs some update, but not that much in your sector specifically, cargo, logistics and transport. The ministry has issued a request for assistance to recalculate or reconfirm the impact it would have, the introduction of VAT, both on cost of living and inflation, but also on the revenue numbers that Bahrain would gain from it. There is some old numbers that are circulating, which says that Bahrain would earn in the first 12 months of introduction of VAT about 500 million BD, but that needs to be updated specifically. There is also an inflation, a one-off inflation impact that was calculated by my team a few years ago, and which would be at 4%. Now, in the meantime, this has evolved a little bit, and that 4% one-off inflation impact might actually be lower because Bahrain has onboarded some of the more social acceptable approaches like zero rating for basic food supplies, zero rating for medical and pharmaceutical supplies, for life insurance as well. So there's a couple of elements that might have a more positive impact on the already negative impact on inflation. The tax authority is, well, at least it's on paper, what it should look like, who should be there. The job descriptions are ready, but there has been made no start currently with any recruitment of any officials. What Bahrain and what any GCC country will be ready with in the beginning is a portal, so you can ask for your VAT registration number. You're going to have that. In the UAE, which goes on the 1st of January, the expectation is that end of October, beginning of November, that portal will go open. Yes, there will be a rush, and hopefully it will not crash, but typically 2 to 3 months before, you can apply for your VAT registration number. Bahrain and any other country will also have in place an online VAT return filing portal. So tax returns will have to be filed online. That's the expectation. I cannot see it feasible, at least not in the 21st century, and with the current business environment, that you would go down to manual work. But okay, always take into account the plan B to go indeed on some manual aspects. There's going to be an online portal. What I don't expect will be fully fledged and fully ready is a tax authority. That means, in very mundane terms, it's going to be very improbable that you can pick up the phone, call the tax authority and ask a question, okay, I've got this transaction, what should I do? That's in place in a lot of other countries, probably every other country with a mature VAT system, but that's going to be probably an issue in the very beginning. So I don't call it chaos, I call it probably a period of uncertainty. What is currently the discussion is that, the same as happened with Tamkeen, is that Bahrain would outsource its tax authority for a couple of years and then take it back in to a third party, at least to get it going. I send some questions, and if they would not be here, I would be surprised, but the question is, okay, fine, they will not be ready, should we be ready? Can we not just take a relaxed approach? Please don't do that, be ready. The tax authority has about 5 years to come back to you and audit you from the very beginning. Penalties for non-compliance, penalties for overpayment, penalties for over-recovery, underpayment and over-recovery will be severe. The UAE has announced its penalty regime, 500% on top of what you owe, of what you haven't paid, or 500% on top what you have recovered too much on VAT, plus of course the VAT amount. So that's quite heavy. Bahrain is not going to go for a single penalty, but the draft legislation provides indeed for some significant double-digit numbers. At least there is a distinction in the draft legislation between willfully avoiding VAT or indeed making a compliance mistake. So at least that one, but it's still going to be a big enough stick behind the door to make everybody compliant, or at least not to take any risk for it. So we do have, and that's important, if you didn't receive a copy, I think it's a KPMG copy, but it's made public. So the GCC Framework Agreement exists. That means that already now we know, and definitely for your sector, we know actually about 100%, we'll call it 95% of the VAT treatment. So I'm pretty comfortable standing in front of the specialists of the matter. It is indeed a basis for it. This needs to be translated, or at least laid down in local legislation, and every country is doing that. But if you don't have a copy of it yet, I think I prepared one with both the official Arabic text and English text. So through my friends of the event, I think I'm happy indeed to circulate that one to anybody who is interested in it. We also have an assessment around this one. But it needs to be translated as it goes. I guess that's what we already discussed earlier. Quick one, probably you heard that one. The GCC is just the next family of countries that are joining the big VAT family. So VAT or indirect taxes, it can also be called GST or anybody else. It's definitely spreading around. It becomes and it is already in most countries the most prominent revenue source for governments. Much more than corporate income tax, much more than personal income tax. So we call it actually a shift from direct tax to indirect tax. Also because it's reasonably cheap to administer, because the people and the players administering and dealing with the VAT compliance are the taxpayers, so it's yourselves. So you will be indeed required to calculate the VAT. You will collect the VAT from your clients and customers. You will pay the VAT to your suppliers, and then when you have basically netting all of that one off, then you have to pay yourself the VAT and file a return. So it's a bit like a self-administration, self-assessment. So it's reasonably cheap for governments to administer. The one big white spot, well, for the moment it's of course the GCC, but that's going to be black very soon. It's of course not Greenland, but it's the US. So the US has a sales tax, which is a very different animal to a VAT. VAT will be affecting the whole supply chain, from your suppliers over your services towards your clients and customers. So 166 countries now, that's about accurate for the moment. So that will be coming 172 next year for sure. 5%, let's be happy. I'm basically lived for 12 years in a country, Hungary, which had a 27% VAT rate. Now that's pretty hefty. So it says UE proposed, but it's now GCC proposed overall. So it's 5% going forward. Don't forget, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have VAT. In principle, for what you gents and ladies are doing, it should be quite neutral, at least within your business. It's not neutral for us as private individuals that are going to Bahrain City Mall, or the Bahrain Mall, the City Mall. Of course, then we pay the VAT. But overall, within the business, it should be no cost to you. But it can have a cash flow impact, and it can only become a cost if you don't basically do the compliance in a proper way, if you don't report and account for it in a proper way. But overall, 5% is going to be the rate, and it's one of the lowest rates that you can see. Malaysia introduced it at 6% 2 years ago. Singapore started at 3%, but in the meantime, they're already up to 7%. So it's a pretty low entry level as it goes. And with this document, it's not going to be a piece of cake to change that rate quickly going upwards. You know, I like VAT a lot. First of all, it brings the bread and butter on the table of my family. But it's also quite a fantastic tax, because it really, as soon as you actually buy or sell something, a service or a good, no, that's not accurate. As soon as you're thinking even about buying or selling something, as soon as you're thinking about investment, as soon as you make your forecast for next year, as soon as you might be looking at new shipping routes, new services, it's going to have a VAT impact. Because you need to look already forward, what will be the cost? Will it be with VAT? Will it be without VAT? You might make some investments. You're looking at new means of transport you want to buy. Are they coming from abroad? Do I have to pay VAT on the imports? All of that one already around your business planning, VAT comes in, and you need to look at it. So it's really like a street tax altogether. So whatever you do, it's all constantly in all the layers of the business. But it's also quite a logical tax. Okay, I've got maybe the advantage, and I'm not, I have an immense respect for all of you. I'm a lawyer myself. I hope I don't look like one, but for me, legislation is quite logic. There's a couple of simple questions you can ask yourself, and that's going to take you already a long way. First of all, quite simply, what am I doing? Am I supplying goods? Am I supplying services? Worst case, you're doing both in one bundle potentially, but at least what am I doing specifically? So breaking down, what am I doing? Okay, in the transport sector, you might have indeed underlying services. You might be an intermediary for insurance. You might basically also bundle in your transport service packaging, warehousing, so these elements need to be there, and that needs to be looked at, but at least you can break it down in what am I doing. VAT is applicable to any supply of goods and any supply of services. What is a supply of services? Well, it's basically everything that's not a supply of goods. So VAT covers everything. There is a few elements that would escape it. Mergers of companies, for example. So when you transfer all the material, all the goods, all the assets, that would normally escape VAT. Some other aspects where there is not a commercial one. So if you hold dividends, if you might have a holding company or you hold dividends and you get, shares and you get dividend income, that is not a commercial activity. Government organizations, they don't have commercial activities, so they are escaping VAT as well. But government organizations that do commercial activities, BAPCO, EWA, they will indeed be subject to VAT. So it really covers most of it as well. By the way, if ever, in 5 years' time, we would shoot a rocket with people to the moon, and your employees are going to the moon to set up a new business over there, it will be subject to VAT. So I think, so it doesn't escape any geography as it goes. It's about what you are doing that is subject to VAT. Once you know what you are doing, then the next question is actually, where am I doing it? Because that's a so-called place of supply. So every service, every supply type of goods or material will be linked with a certain place of supply. And that place of supply is not necessarily, well, that's a starting point, but it's not going to be necessarily remain the place where you are established as a business. So you might indeed do real estate services, which is, for example, warehousing. If you're providing pure warehousing services, then the place of supply and the place where you need to go and look at the applicable legislation will be where the warehouse is located. Once you know what am I doing, where am I doing it, then at least you can look at, okay, what is the applicable legislation, what is the tax rate. Most of your services, when they provide it locally, they will be subject to 5% tax. But again, it depends also where, because that can be your customer who might be responsible for it, or it might be yourself that has to charge it, depending where it goes. We'll come back to that one right away. Once you know, okay, this is where I need to tax it, you've got a final question to ask yourself: when is it due? Because the time of supply can again be different. There are some simple rules. Either when you issue an invoice, when you basically supply the service or the goods, so when the transfer of the ownership in case of a good is done, or when the service is finished, or when you receive payment, whatever is earlier. So you might have already supplied your service, all done, but you haven't issued your invoice or haven't received payment. But even in that case, your VAT will be due on it, and you have to report it, even though you might only get paid maybe 3 months later. So whichever is the earlier one. If you have continuous services, like you have a multiple-year rental contract for warehousing, in that case, whenever you receive a payment, whenever basically you issue an assessment for that one. So these are the basic questions, and that's going to get you already quite a long way to knowing it. And of course, the point is, how do I need to pay for it, or how can I recover it? That's all the compliance element to it. VAT recovery was mentioned as well, by the way. So some of you, especially if you've got international transport, you might indeed incur quite some VAT from the local market. It can be basically your premises rent, because commercial rent will be subject to VAT. It can be maintenance to your trucks, to your vessels, whatever you're using. But since you are basically engaged in mostly international transport, you will be in a net VAT position, as we call it, because you will be able to recover more than you have to pay. There's going to be 2 methods for that. Either you can ask for the refund, but experience, probably your experience as well, shows that in Bahrain specifically, and it's not different in many other GCC countries, it can take up to 2 years to get cash money back. So that might not be the best option. Maybe a better option, at least if you might have indeed some taxable transactions later on, is to basically carry it forward and net it off then. So I think there is ways indeed to look exactly at your cash flow to make sure that the impact on your cash flow is not affecting your margin either. Some basics of VAT, and I think that's some elements that you will hear. So standard is basically the generic and the standard VAT rate. So it's going to be 5%. Quite simple, you do here a local transport, or you basically provide local packaging services. You provide local warehousing services to a Bahraini client here in the country, or the same like example in any other GC country, you charge 5% VAT. 0% or the reduced rate is really a tax rate. It's a 0% tax rate. That's going to be typically applicable to your international transport, as well as passengers as well as goods, but we'll come to that one later on, just indeed for you to have it one. So there is no other reduced rate for the moment than 0% in the GCC across it. Exempt in principle, and I mark my words, in principle should not affect yourselves. Exempt is basically implying that you don't charge any VAT, so it's officially no cost to your clients, but whatever is attributed to that type of transaction, if it carries VAT, you cannot get a refund of that VAT. So it becomes a cost, and typically a cost is passed on to it. Exempt, we expect indeed financial services. So if some of you would have a shootout in the financial services, which is interest or margin based, it will be exempt. If some of you have life insurance, which is the expectation here in Bahrain, it will be exempt, but in principle, most of your services, 99.9%, will be subject to a standard or a zero VAT rate. It's not as simple as that one, so it's a bit more sophisticated, that's what it goes. Outside scope, we talked about this one. So outside scope implies that you have no commercial activity falling within the VAT sector. But who is doing it doesn't matter. It's about what you're doing. So a charity, for example, might sell goods specifically in a kind of charity shop, and it basically will have to apply VAT because it's normal from a commercial transaction. If it exceeds the threshold of 37,500 BD or 100,000 equivalent US dollars, that's a threshold for mandatory registration. Below that one, you might escape indeed the VAT. VAT is due on revenue, by the way. It's not due on profit. So you might be selling goods or services at a loss. It still will attract VAT on the revenue that you will get from that. We talked about output tax. It's what you charge. Input tax, what you are charged and which you can normally recover. Supply is actually the word that you use for a sale, and the consideration is every payment that you receive. It is not impossible that you might receive combined payments from different sources for the same type of service. In that case, you have to basically account for VAT on the whole consideration that you do get. To know if it's common practice or maybe just every now and then practice, that you might exchange goods or exchange services. I do this for you, you do this for me. In that case, you talk still about two different supplies. Each of them will have to basically be calculated what is the value for it, and you will have to apply VAT on it. So it really goes very broadly. It's not just about pro facto supplies it is. Reverse charge, let me quickly give myself 30 seconds to tell you that one. Reverse charge basically is typically when you buy a service, mostly a service, or when you buy a good when it's coming from another GC country. When you buy that from abroad, then it will in principle not carry any VAT on the invoice from your supplier. But, and especially when it's a service, it's going to be you who becomes responsible for applying local VAT. So you charge it to yourself. So the charge of the VAT is reversed, let's say, from the UK to Bahrain or to any other GCC country. So you have to account for the VAT that is due on the taxable basis of the service. That's an accounting entry. I do appreciate this one, but please make that accounting entry because otherwise you have not declared sufficient VAT and you could get that 500% penalty in the UAE. Especially because you might be a bit more relaxed. That 5% you have to charge it to yourself, but you will also be able to account for it as recoverable. So it should not be a cost. So it becomes like a zero result in your books, but still do the plus because that's what they're looking at. The minus or the recovery, that's your responsibility and that's your own initiative. So make sure that indeed becomes a 0%. That's a plus and a minus and it becomes a zero at the end. that's the last one around the point, and I'm going to basically the key sector considerations for your business sector. Just indeed to really embed it in yourself. So take a warehouse provider. He charges the transport provider with 300 BD as a service, has to apply VAT on it, 15 BD, and then the transport provider actually